Hello, Sagittarius, and welcome to your mid-month check-in for July 2021. Be sure to check out your sun, moon, and rising for a more well-rounded perception in this general reading. And if you're interested in an extended version of this reading, I actually have those available on my website for a small fee. Just go ahead into the description box below for a link for that. All right, let's go ahead and begin. Right away, we are starting with the High Priestess card, and I feel that this is really tapping into the fact that you've been connecting with the spiritual aspect of yourself to a level that's making you feel more confident in trusting your intuition, sort of not just trusting, but also understanding how your intuition works. So it's not something that's new. You've been aware of your intuitive spiritual connections most of your life, but you either have disregarded them or sometimes they didn't make sense until much later after the fact, where in hindsight, things were able to be seen more clearly. But you're getting to a point where you're understanding how these insights are coming through. So there are aspects of premonition that are pretty much validated pretty quickly, as far as you see or know something and it's really close to when that thing happens. But there are other ways that you have been receiving intuition that isn't quite closely related or connected in time. So the validation isn't as instantaneous. And in those instances, you're starting to understand how this is working for you. You're starting to be able to interpret these sorts of intuitive hits and connections that you've been receiving, because you're starting to see a pattern. And like I said, you're starting to understand how your connection is working, and you're being told to just continue to connect, continue to watch for those patterns, continue to understand how your connection works for you. But you're also being told not to get too fixated on this, that you don't still participate in life in general. So there's a fine line of almost becoming too passive when we get into our spiritual journeys. Or passive isn't necessarily the right word, in that we actually become more active spiritually, but we become less active in the physical realm. And you're needed to be just as active in participating in everyday life, in the mundane, as you are, excuse me, in practicing and focusing on the spiritual aspect. So as you continue to connect and understand and see these patterns that you are understanding better about yourself and your connection, they're just saying, don't become so active in the spiritual aspect of your life that you become too passive in the physical living aspect of life. That's just as important in this message as it is that you understand the spiritual. So there's a balance, basically, and they're just telling you not to sacrifice one aspect of living to the other aspect of living. Make sure that you find a means of being active in your spiritual life in equal proportion to how you are active in the mundane aspect of living your life. Along with this card, we also have the Knight of Cups in reverse. I feel like this might not apply to everybody. Take however this applies to you. As with all general readings, take what resonates and leave the rest. But I feel like this has to do very heavily with children. So something's going on with children in your life, that, and it might even be connected with this intuitive connection that you have. Now, there's an aspect of ourselves, especially as moms or as parents, where we are very active in our kids' life as far as guiding them and helping them and assisting them with where they're at and where they're going. But at some point in their life, sometimes sooner than others for whatever reason, they start tapping into their individuality and they start exerting that, and then trying to balance how we continue to be a part of that in a way that's not usurping control over them is difficult. Now, obviously, I'm talking about older children. I'm not talking about when they're really young and you need to be overseeing their lives in a way that keeps them safe. I'm talking about when they get to an age where they are supposed to be more independent, and we have to kind of struggle with how it is that we're supposed to balance still being a part of that person who guides them versus that person who supports them, even if you don't agree with them necessarily. So this is definitely older children. It feels very male-oriented, although it doesn't have to necessarily be just for or applicable to male children. The fact that it's a night, the nights have a tendency, as far as age is concerned, to refer to teenagers. So I feel like this is more towards the teenagers, but a good many of you, it's more with those who are boys than girls. I'm not saying that girls can't be a bit of a struggle as well, but there's definitely a little bit, this feels more that it resonates with older sons, difficulties with, having struggles with older sons and trying to figure out your position in how to handle this and how to approach this and still be available to them. And the cups let me know that there's a lot of emotion involved with this. For both parties, or all parties involved. So towards the end of the month, there feels like there's things that are occurring that you are having to face and deal with and try to figure out your position in place with guiding. How much are you supposed to be directing them as the queen or king of the domain, as king and queens do as far as knights are concerned? And how much are you supposed to be allowing them to make their own decisions, because it's their battle. They're on their battlefield and it's their battle and they're there versus you not being there. If you go from the personification or the analogy of, being the king or the queen and the knight being the one who's actually in the battle, any and all decisions that are being made in some instances are being made by the king or the queen off battle. They're just making those decisions based on the reports that they're receiving. And then they're giving the orders as a result of that. And sometimes the knight has to make a decision based on instantaneous results, things that are happening right then, right there. There might need to be a change of plans. There's not enough time to go for advice. So these are the sort of circumstances that you need to kind of keep in mind when you're dealing with this particular situation. But it definitely feels very much that it has to do with older children that you are sort of struggling with. And trying to figure out that balance, because they're not really children anymore. I mean, they're still your child. They'll always be your child, but they're not children anymore. And, decisions are made. Things are kind of already happening. And at some point, there has to be a bit of a stepping back as far as the amount of guidance and direction that you're giving, because at some point you have to realize that they're the ones who's in the battle. They're the ones that have to make the decision, and they're the ones who have to ultimately live with the end result. I mean, you have to too, but not on the same degree or level that they are. So however that applies, I do feel like there's definitely a connection again with that spiritual connection. There's intuitive. So, when you're receiving the intuitive advice, you can give it, but sometimes when we get to a certain age, we don't like unsolicited advice. So just remember that. So, but as you're connecting spiritually, just make sure that while you're doing that, you're also still participating in the mundane, still being available, and also being available as a source, being available in the mundane as a source for connection for this particular person or these persons to the spiritual, however that applies. Finally, we have creativity and vitality. I feel like this is a message that's letting you know that you need to be creative in your approach, not domineering, not authoritarian, not tyrannical. You need to find ways that you can get your message and your advice across that is still done in love, is still done with that spiritual connection. Like, you have that knowledge. It feels like some of you, in some instances, you already have the knowledge regarding the situation that is a little bit different than being in the thick of it, but you still have to be creative in how you present it. Again, because we all do get to that point in our life, we get to that stage in our life where we do not appreciate unsolicited advice. And so you have to be creative in being able to display or present the information that you may have received spiritually because of your spiritual connections in such a way that it's actually received in a way that it can be more productive than, just being from that position of king or queen of the castle. And because I said, this is my kingdom and this is what I want done. So these are all analogies. However they work with you and resonate, I'll speak to your spiritual connection as far as how this resonates best for you and your approach. But overall, this is the message that I am being given being told to give, or being given to give. So a lot of a little bit of a turmoil as we enter into the last half of July. The takeaway is that I feel predominantly that your connection, there's truth to your perception of your connection, and allow yourself to connect with that. Allow yourself to find strength in that. Allow yourself to find hope in that. Allow yourself to find what you need to find to carry you through whatever is going on, because it's available to you. But don't forget, like I said in the beginning of the video, that you don't want to get so connected with that you become passive in the actual living of life, because you still need to stay connected. You still need to live life as it's presented to you. You don't want to disconnect from the mundane so much that you become passive in the mundane, you become passive in the physical realm, and only are existing on the spiritual realm available to us. You need to find that balance of being connected for direction, guidance, and strength, while you still live out whatever it is that mundane experience is presenting to you. All right, Sagittarius, I hope this helps to provide you with strength and empowerment as you move through the rest of this month. If you're looking for extended portion of this reading, go ahead and check out the link box below. I am offering them all for a small fee. Other than that, I wish you much luck and power through the rest of the month, and hopefully I will see you in August.